Hello everybody and welcome to my channel, The Real Super Sam. Today is another top 5 stories list on my channel and I hope you enjoy. And welcome to hashtag Spider-Man Sunday. The Green Goblin, Spider-Man's most popular enemy, and I say he is Peter Parker's greatest enemy, not Spider-Man's, if you understand me. Norman Osborn has done so many horrible things to Spidey personally, he is more of an enemy to Peter Parker as a civilian than Spider-Man. With Green Goblin's mind, strength, and crazy strong unpredictability, it shows up every time he's in comics or media. There are so many great comics where he is the main antagonist. This video will be all about the first Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. There will be another video for the other goblins like Harry and alternative Green Goblins. Today I have listed the top 5 stories for Green Goblin. This was easier for me than the top Dr. Octopus stories, but please tell me your favorites or just great Green Goblin moments down below. And since Green Goblin isn't a member of the Sinister Six, I don't have to flat out say no team-up stories like my last 4 top 5 stories videos. I guess I just did, but anyway. Without further ado, let's get on with hashtag Spider-Man Sunday and a brand new episode of Top 5 Stories. Number 5, and now the Goblin. In the grip of the Goblin's last grasp. A 3-parter in Amazing Spider-Man issues 96 through 98, he has the return of the Green Goblin officially returning into the mainstream run of the Amazing Spider-Man since issue 40. Peter Parker gets a job working for Osborn Industries, and at this time in living in Harry Osborn's apartment with him for free. Everything should be perfect for Peter Parker. The Goblin Osborn hasn't been around in years. But after a lot of stress has got to Norman, and that problem having to do with drugs, he starts getting sick and weird. And that leads to the return of the Green Goblin. And Harry Osborn has resorted to drugs to solve his problems. Then Harry overdoses and Peter Parker uses that against Green Goblin. He starts to remember and gets scared, so he decides to fly away, and that's how he gets defeated in the end. The Green Goblin here has a lot of great new tricks to attack Spidey with. Every fight between the two are great here, and this is the classic Green Goblin art I love. But I really like the drug awareness story. Green Goblin wasn't Spider-Man's greatest enemy at the time of this, it was Doc Ock. Just the character of Norman Osborn and his son fit with this story perfectly. And eventually the father inside Green Goblin stops fighting himself and shocks him back to normal again. So yeah, they just brought Green Goblin back for this one story, but I really like it and is one of the most known comic books of all time. Number 4, the night when Stacy died, the Goblin's last stand. The most well-known Spider-Man story, the death of Gwen Stacy, happened in Amazing Spider-Man 121 and 122. Green Goblin dies here, he returns, but for the longest time, this was the end of him. It is also an iconic death, being killed with his own glider. This story, the death of Gwen, all being his fault, is something that haunts Spider-Man even to this day. Osborn snaps again, just like the last time he was the Green Goblin, which was number 5 story, and becomes the Green Goblin once again. And now is going after Gwen Stacy to deliver Spider-Man the hardest blow. I find the comics to have Norman Osborn as a threat and then the Green Goblin as an out-of-control lunatic to be the best ones. He's definitely out of his mind here. Once again, they brought Green Goblin back, but this time to kill him. I guess overall, the inconclusion of Green Goblin is partly why this story was made, to completely forget about him. I know Harry becomes a Goblin, but they didn't plan that back in 1972. I wonder if some people think this would be number 1 or 2, but I find the next story way better personally. After Gwen dies, one of his son's best friends, he doesn't even care, he just worries about his business. It's just him and Spider-Man. It's always been him and Spider-Man to Norman. Spider-Man goes all out on Goblin throughout the story. It's amazing Norman isn't crippled or unconscious after some points. What I love is at the end, where Spider-Man can but doesn't kill Goblin, even when God sure knows he deserves it. There is also something with Norman Osborn in the last two stories, where he starts acting like no one can talk back to him or question him, almost like he thinks he's a god, and that is something Norman Osborn in the future is sometimes talking about himself as. Number 3. How Green Was My Goblin. Spidey Saves the Day. The very first John Romita Spider-Man issues, he sure started his time on Spidey with a bang in Amazing Spider-Man issue 39 and 40. This is a story that has the Green Goblin's origin and secret identity as Norman Osborn, Peter Parker's best friend's father figure, revealed, after he first appeared years before in issue 14. Green Goblin easily beats Peter Parker because he isn't Spider-Man, and they're in front of his aunt's house. Back in the 60s, Green Goblin just kept popping up every couple issues to annoy and fight Spider-Man. Now it's the final battle for him. He gives everything he has against Spider-Man, even following him to find out his secret identity. The best part of this story is when we see the duality of Norman Osborn and what caused him to create this separate identity of the Green Goblin. I think Green Goblin is just crazy with his love for Spider-Man and the battle between the two. I don't think Green Goblin here freed Spidey because he was about to break out anyway, but either way, at the end, he wants a clean fight. This, throughout, is ultimately his downfall in his life. In issue 800, this happens also. He gets too cocky and just wants to fight Spider-Man, and lets go of his overwhelming card. The epic battle happens and Green Goblin gets hit hard with electricity and smoke goes everywhere. He may be dead. And everything ends fine. It had one of the best, if not the best, Green Goblin vs. Spider-Man fights ever. He uses everything. And Spider-Man has a problem. Green Goblin now knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, so even if he stops Osborn, he will still have that knowledge. In the fight, Spider-Man must fight the thought of killing him also while surviving his attacks. It's one of the most known Spider-Man stories, and one of the best Goblin ones also. Number 2. The Goblin Lives. A one-shot story in Spectacular Spider-Man Annual 2, it has the return of the Green Goblin. And it's almost just like episode 41 from Spider-Man the Animated Series. In my opinion, this has the greatest Spider-Man vs. Green Goblin fight ever written. Norman has a bunch of new tools and weapons he's never had before here, and it's interesting to see Spider-Man overcome them. Once again, Norman remembers his villainous past and becomes the Green Goblin once again. Interestingly, this isn't part of the mainstream Spider-Man run, but this happens after issue 40 but before issue 96. This is never mentioned, except once, before this magazine chronologically, so I picture this as a one-off comic since Green Goblin loses his memory at the end once again. Norman Osborn invites Peter to a dinner party with his son, MJ, and Gwen. There, he starts to tease Peter Parker and starts to lose control. Peter Parker burns a web ball to create a smokescreen to make it look like there's a fire so he can get away. And now, it's just Spider-Man vs. Green Goblin. I love the new hallucinatory bomb Goblin uses against Spider-Man, making him picture his greatest foes attacking him all at once. He looks like a Disney character here, but Norman Osborn has full hatred towards Spider-Man, enough that he may reveal his own identity just to hurt him. Eventually, Spider-Man beats Green Goblin and uses the hallucinatory bomb against Norman, causing him to be afraid of Green Goblin and Spider-Man. It's a story that makes Green Goblin Spider-Man's greatest enemy, and not Peter Parker, but definitely explores all of Osborn's ideas when he's becoming Green Goblin and what drives him. It's almost like he's a different person when he puts on the costume, driving him out of his mind. And now, for the greatest Green Goblin story ever told. Number 1. A Death in the Family. By far the best Green Goblin story of all, published in Peter Parker Spider-Man issues 44 through 47. The fact that this is the same story title as this Batman-related one in the Death in the Family says it's gonna be good. At the start, Norman visits his son Harry's grave, then tells him he was a disappointment. He won't be back. Something big is going down. Norman decides to become the Green Goblin again and go after Spider-Man. Green Goblin views Peter as his son, and Peter is tired of the feud between the two. Osborn goes after Flash Thompson, a part of his plan to destroy and change Peter Parker. The bully-turned-friend, Flash, in the past had alcohol issues, and Norman uses that against him and Peter, tying him down and making him drink till he's buzzed and sends him crashing in a car. Once again, a powerful blow against Peter Parker. Throughout the story, Peter and Osborn run into and threaten each other in each one's personal life, Peter at school and Norman at work. The best part happens at the end, where Peter Parker and Norman Osborn, after fighting, have a heart-to-heart, and Peter tells him what the death of Gwen Stacy really meant to him. The two even share a laugh at the end. It reminds me of The Killing Joke. And also, Norman acts like a father when it comes to Peter and him dealing with this troubling nightmare he's been having. Peter decides to not kill Osborn and lets him walk away, because he is better than Osborn and always will be. And he says to Norman, being himself, is punishment enough. The ending is pure gold. $5 and a pizza says I can, reflecting the first fight in the story. At the end, he is so defeated, he thinks of suicide. This story definitely ends a chapter in the Green Goblin Spider-Man rivalry. It's a really great Peter Parker story, and the real reason Green Goblin is Peter Parker's greatest enemy. The story explores every part between the two, and the conclusion leads to many different areas in each one's lives could go next. Very few punches are thrown. It is the quietest story on this list, but it just screams emotions. It's almost like every issue with Green Goblin has been leading up to this. That was my top 5 Green Goblin stories. In my opinion, a lot of them were Green Goblin returning for just one story. And yeah, the artwork for number 1 was horrible. I hate it. What were they thinking? It looks awful. I hope you enjoyed. Please comment your favorite stories down below. There's a lot more Goblin videos to come on this channel, so please subscribe. A lot of these were older Green Goblin stories, not just because it was about Norman Osborn, but because I like more personal, deep comics with Green Goblin, and the ones closer to the present just play off events that happened in the past. So, that was my list. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.